I'm Tim. Welcome back to the Goodwerks podcast, number 3. So we just wrapped up a 3-day, 2.5-day.
Yeah, it's considered a 3-day, really.
3-day.
Yeah.
Just wrapped up a 3-day modern survival course with Jake Trent at Buckeye Bushcraft. We're down here to meet in Chesapeake, Ohio. So wanted to take advantage of the time being down here and talk with Jake a little bit, learn about Buckeye Bushcraft, learn what Jake's doing. And I thought, you guys would be interested in knowing about Jake and his business and his expertise and the valuable skills that he teaches. And he brings in other instructors that he's worked with. So tell me a little bit. So your name is Jake Trent.
Yep, obviously.
Yep. Okay. So tell me, Jake, about your history in bushcraft. You're a young guy.
Yep. 21.
Yep. So you're a young dude, and we're sitting in your schoolhouse right now.
Yep.
On your school property.
Yep.
So tell me what was the foundation of Jake's bushcraft journey?
So really it started, my dad, when I was really young, was taking classes, and he decided to start taking classes and just go out in the woods because he really got pretty heavy into this stuff. I was probably 8 or 9 years old or so, and he took me out there with him while he was doing his training, my younger brother and I, and even my older brother, and taught us everything that he was learning, and so we did the process with him. He kind of got out of it over the years, and I never got out of it, so I've been practicing wilderness skills since I was 8 or 9 years old up until now. I never planned on making a career out of it. It was always one of those things where it was almost like people like hunting, right? It's almost like my hobby. So and then I decided I think it was 4 or 5 years ago that I wanted to teach. And so I started teaching, and I obviously had the years of experience behind that to back it up, especially now. But yeah, that's how I really got started. Was my dad got me started in it for sure.
So what is your experience in it? What was, obviously, your dad took you to these courses. What is your experience, and then what kept you coming back to these courses? So
it wasn't so much courses. He was doing a lot of e-courses, like internet style courses, where you would go out, complete tasks or deliverables, and then send them in, and they would grade them and say, hey, this is right, this is not right. But it was more, I always grew up hunting. I always grew up doing, wilderness skills and stuff like that. I've always really enjoyed being in the woods, and it's kind of like my area of peace, I guess you can say. So if I want to get away from the outside world for a little while, head to the woods for a few days, not a big deal. But I always did that since I was young. Grew up hunting, fishing, trapping, doing wilderness skills. And the thing about it too, that I've come to realize as I get older, that I enjoy teaching a lot more. I enjoy seeing people progress when they show up. They have next to nothing skills, but when they leave, they can start a fire with pretty much anything, right? I like seeing that progress and people push past boundaries that they may not have been able to push past before. And that's what I really enjoy with it. But as far as the experience behind it goes, I just grew up doing this stuff. I've been doing it for close to 15 years now, I think. So somewhere right around in there, but I just love it.
So when you say wilderness skills, what do you mean by wilderness skills?
In my mind, wilderness skills encompasses basically everything that includes any skill type in the wilderness, right? Okay. So whether it's bushcraft, survival type skills, primitive skills, wilderness skills is kind of the broad term that encompasses all that.
So give me some examples of those skills.
So bushcraft is going to be more related to, taking minimal stuff out into the woods and making everything that you need from the landscape. Primitive skills also focuses on that, but that's more of a focus on what more the native peoples did before we were here. So you might be using stone tools, friction fire, all that stuff. Bushcraft, in essence, is being able to pretty much make anything you need with tools that you brought in. So you bring specific tools in, and then you make what you need, whether it's shelter, spoons, bowls, camp carving stuff, all of that. The fire by friction, So those two, that's the thing, is it's under an umbrella, but they all intertwine.
Sure.
So that's just how it is. Survival skills is more, for a 72-hour scenario type deal, like we did this past weekend. So it's what to do if you get lost, and there's no set. There is a list of things that obviously we went over that you need to be able to complete, but depending on the situation you're in, that list changes, and that's the whole focus on that, is being prepared and getting the skills that you need to survive a 72-hour scenario.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, man, that's a lot of information, and I'm tired. I'm trying to I had a thought, and then it evaporated.
It is, man. It is a lot of information. That's the thing too. Is a lot of people don't realize, they think, oh, there's only bushcraft, or there's only survival, there's only wilderness skills. Are you talking about bushcraft, survival? What are you talking about? Wilderness skills encompasses it all. Yeah. So I really like that name. Obviously, my company name is Buckeye Bushcraft. That's mainly because it sounded, pretty cool. Pretty cool. And bushcraft and survival are overhyped words, right? It's on every single product. It's on every single company, So to be honest with you, I don't like the name bushcraft at all. It was always the American term of bushcraft was woodcraft. So it's the same exact thing, but that's the American term for it. Yeah.
So with your experience and stuff, working up to becoming a teacher, what have you done? What skills have you acquired? What makes you a legitimate, valuable, what makes you a good teacher, and what have you experienced and what have you done that I don't want to say separates you from other people, but what makes you what makes it so that way people go, hey, I want to go take a course?
So obviously grew up doing this stuff. We already talked about that. I went through an instructor program at a certain school, did that, completed that, was an instructor there for a little while, ended up leaving to start my own thing. I've trained hundreds of students from all over the world. It's important as an instructor, and there's a lot of people in this industry and you've heard me say this week, and there's a lot of people in this industry that call themselves instructors that should not actually be teaching because they don't have the skills or they don't have the experience behind what they're teaching. It's one thing to read something from a book and then write it on a board and talk about it. It's another thing to actually go do that, whatever you just read, until you can't do it wrong and then go teach it.
Right.
That's where the experience comes from. So,
what are some of your experiences then? So give me something, some of the stuff that profound stuff that sticks out.
So friction fire, for example. I got my first friction fire years ago, bow drill. It took me 68 or 69 attempts before I got my first ember. But once I got my first ember with it, it clicked. And ever since then, and friction fire is kind of iffy because you can never get it 100% of the time, ever. Nobody, I don't care how skilled you are, there's always that chance that you're not going to get it, whether the weather's too crappy or what have you. And for people who aren't experienced in this stuff, the chances of them getting a friction fire is about 30 to 40%. But after I got that, it's okay, now I know what it feels like, I know what it sounds like, I know what it smells like whenever it's a right set. And then just kept going and working on it. Now it's, to the point to where I don't even have to practice it that much because I pretty much have it down for the most part, for eastern woodlands at least. But it's important as an instructor too, I feel like, and I'm doing this some next year because I'm more trained in the eastern woodlands because it's where I grew up, it's where I lived, it's where I did all my training. But I'm headed out to the desert next, it would be in January. So it's going to, 2 months from now? So January, I'll be taking a 15-day one-on-one primitive skills course with Donnie Dust.
That's amazing.
So with just primitive tools. So it's completely out of my element, but I'll have that experience of the class, and then whatever I learn, I'm able to come back here, practice those skills, and once I not perfect them, but strive for perfection, but once I get really good at those and I understand it completely, then I'm able to teach it. I'll never come back from a course that I took and then teach someone something I just learned, like I've been doing it for years. That's not how it works. You have to get the experience to back it. But it's important as an instructor and a wilderness skills teacher is not only, you don't want to just get stuck on one thing or just one mind or one way. Have an open mind, go train with other instructors, because that's how you build community and also experience. So obviously there's no desert around here, so I'm headed out to get desert training, right?
Awesome.
So yeah.
So you speak about going and experiencing other instructors and going to their courses. This weekend you brought in 2 other instructors as well.
Yep, so you got Tony Powers from Dirtbound Survival and then Paul Hack from Adaptable Survival, 2 really good friends of mine. We taught together about a year ago and before that, but it's been about a year since we've taught together. So I wanted to bring them in for the first class here and have them here just to kind of like a reunion, I guess you could say. Like the boys are back together and help out with the class some. So I brought them in. They're really good at what they do. Tony is a little bit more of a primitive skills guy. Paul is more of a modern survival skills guy. So it's the perfect mix together. It's complete opposites almost, but they mix really well when it comes to teaching. So, yeah.
So this weekend was your first.
Yep.
Your first Buckeye Bushcraft course?
Yep, the first course here. I think I only posted this class 2 months ago. There were 8 signed up. One guy could not make it because he had car trouble. So, so we had 7 total that were in the class. Everyone did really good. I've got a class in January that is actually overfilled now. I think I capped it at 10 and I have 12 signed up for it. Specifically because I have to bring in certain materials for that class. But, and then posting my 2024 schedule end of next week. And then once that's posted, I have a feeling that they're going to fill pretty quick.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how do you think that, being that this was your first course, so was this your first course under Buckeye Bushcraft?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just this location, it's your first course as this business entity.
Yeah,
Got it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you feel that the course went?
I feel it went pretty good. Paul and Tony both are excellent instructors. Of course, with every course you teach, there's always little tweaks and stuff you can make to make the next one better. So I've kind of already got in my mind what I have planned on for the next one. But yeah, it's just like, I've been teaching now for quite a few years. So, to me and to Paul and to Tony, teaching a basic survival course is pretty simple for us as far as what we need to teach. But what's important is that the students understand what we're teaching and take away from it. So I feel like it went pretty good. Everybody did good. Everybody stayed warm, right?
Mostly.
Mostly. You're going to get cold eventually.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I feel like it went really well though for being the first class here, new location. Not everything in here is completely finished yet. So the solar power's not in yet. So we had to use a generator. So yeah, I feel like it went pretty good.
Good.
So.
And so can you I know what it's about, being that I just took the course.
Yep.
But can you explain what the modern survival course is and kind of just a general?
Yeah. So it is what it is it's the basic. We teach the basic skills that you need in order to survive a 72-hour scenario. So it's like an introduction almost. It's because this industry and this world of wilderness skills is so freaking huge. I mean, you can go your entire life doing this stuff and you'll always learn something new every single day. That's just how it is. But it's the base set of skills that you need to survive 72-hour scenario. So fire, shelter, water is really the main focus for this class. We don't talk too much on food, because on a 3A scenario, it's not a huge deal. We just tell people to carry some snacks with them. But fire, shelter, water, food, navigation is a big one.
Yep.
And then signaling for rescue, medical aid. So 7 priorities, but we also talk a little bit about communication and protection as well, because it's important, especially in today's world. Everyone carries a cell phone. 95% of people probably carry some sort of firearm with them. So, but we talk a little bit about that, and then we basically go through when we start teaching the students what they're going to do. After we teach it, we have them do it and do it and do it and do it and do it. Repetition is a huge thing.
Sure.
You can't get something down by doing it once.
Right.
So repetition is really big.
So what other kinds of courses do you have, or are you going to be offering?
Yeah, so the one in January is going to be a wilderness living skills course, is what I called it. But it is a more primitive style course. So you're going to learn how to replace with what's on the gear list with natural materials. So you're going to be sleeping in natural shelters. You're going to be making things like burn bowls and doing things like stone boiling to disinfect your water, primitive traps, primitive fire, so primitive cordage. It's mainly a primitive style class is what it is. We'll also have a bushcraft basics class that I'm going to be releasing in the spring. That's going to be like an introduction to bushcraft. So that's going to be a fairly laid back class. So you're going to be doing a lot more stuff off the landscape versus something like a modern survival class where you're more relying on what you have in your kit and what the skills you need to put all the pieces together in your kit to make whatever you need to make. The basic bushcraft class is going to go beyond that and actually talk about what you can make from the landscape more.
Gotcha.
Also planning on a primitive trapping class. So I love primitive trapping. It's one of my niches, I guess you can say. Tony's the same way. That was here this weekend, so it's one of the things he really likes to teach. Also thinking about doing some type of wild edibles class, maybe like a medicinal plants class. So mix those two in like a 2-day class. And then I'm also planning on doing a class specifically for fire making. So show up at the beginning of the class, you start with the basics of fire making, and by the end of it, you're doing bow drill. So in primitive fire. That'll probably be a 2 or 3 day class, believe it or not. So lots of fire is going to be made during that class, obviously. So,
well, I mean, it's an exceedingly important skill to have, and I think that people lose I don't think people have the reverence for fire that they used to have.
Yep.
And I think that, like Bic lighters are awesome, but being able to, carrying a flame, my buddy Corey Murphy says, we owe it to our ancestors to carry flame with us.
Yep.
They went through all the work to get fire, and now we, so we owe it to them to have that. But I think a lot of people miss that, that care and energy and skill and know-how really need to go into building fire.
You give a Native American a Bic lighter, they would have kept it. Same thing with Daniel Boone. They wouldn't have went back to doing friction fire or flint and steel.
Yeah,
so,
any of them.
Fire has always been a huge thing with me too. I love it. I like to make fires in every single way possible. We all have anybody you meet in this industry will all have their little niche of what they like to do. Everyone loves fire, especially whenever you have a 9-year-old kid who's using a ferro rod and some tinder, and he gets a fire for the first time. Just the face, and that's what I absolutely love is to see people who are really enjoying themselves and learning as they're doing it. So the fire class is going to be a good one. We always tell people prepare modern, but also practice primitive. So carry the modern tools that you need, like a Bic lighter, keep one in your pocket, or a ferro rod, what have you. But it's always good to practice the primitive skills. Not that you'll ever need them, just in case you lose some of that stuff, but it gives you a deeper appreciation of the skill as a whole.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So, I mean, you obviously have, we all, I think really that anyone that is in like the outdoor space, especially when it comes to like bushcrafting, survivalism, that type of stuff, like they have there's somewhere, there's like this an affinity for fire.
Yeah. Always.
Now, is that, you mentioned that you like primitive trapping, so like would you say that those two are like your favorite aspects?
Yeah, I would say primitive fire and primitive trapping are probably one of my 2 favorite things to teach, or my 2 favorite things to teach are those 2 things. Just because I'm super proficient in them, and it's just a niche I have. If I'm, bored and I just start messing with something, usually it's a primitive trap of some sort, or it's a new way to start fire, or something like that. Something I don't like. It's good to practice the skills that you already have, but what's important is that you expand and do things that you have never done before. Sure. And a lot of people have a hard time being able to swallow their ego. And someone like me say, I'm trying to start a fire with whatever. And I don't get it for some reason. For some people, that's really hard for them to swallow. But you have to look at it as, if you're teaching people, you have to know these things. So,
Sure.
And you only learn from failure.
Yeah.
So that's the only way to learn.
So I think like on your Instagram the other day I saw some steel wool, and did I see a Fresnel lens that you started? What you started?
So I think I used.
No, it was a flint and steel.
Yeah, flint and steel. Yep. You could use a Fresnel lens with it. So, but like a quadruple aught steel wool, using the spinier knife with a rock, and driving sparks into the steel wool, and it gives you a molten ball of metal, right? Just another way of starting fire. Steel wool doesn't weigh anything. You can keep your tools clean with it. You can also use batteries with it to start fire.
Yep.
You can use the sun with it to start fire. The sparks from an empty Bic lighter. You can use flint and steel, and flint and steel only produces about an 800-degree spark. So that's how little amount of heat that it takes to actually get that thing to go up. So
if somebody's looking to get into, like, if they're curious about bushcrafting or survivalism skills or anything, like, what would be your recommendations? I mean, aside from obviously coming to your school.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
what would be your recommendations for like for people to pursue to get like really good, there's tons of resources.
Yep.
But what would be some of those resources that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously YouTube, right? You can go watch a video on anything on YouTube.
Any specific, besides yours, any specific channels on YouTube that you recommend?
Can see, as an instructor, I'm able to watch a channel and tell if someone's actually done what they're talking about before or not. So it's different for me. But for someone who doesn't really know, what's important is to find someone who is credentialed and actually knows what they're talking about. And there's a lot of people who are no-name people in this industry that don't do social media. They don't do YouTube, none of that stuff. They're some of the best instructors you'll ever have. But
so how do you find them?
You just have to start going to gatherings. There's all kinds of different gatherings across the country, whether it's a bushcraft gathering, like a primitive skills type gathering. Usually you can search up on the internet or Google, just basically put in bushcraft gatherings in North America, and something will pop up. But I know there's an event that I'm doing in March in Eastern Kentucky, and people like Creek Stewart's going to be there. Sean Kelly from Corporal's Corner is going to be there. Paul Hack is going to be there. Tony Powers, I'm going to be there. So going to events like that, being able to take small doses of classes like that with only paying for a vendor ticket, being able to figure out, okay, is this something I really want to get into, or go spend a lot of money on a class and buy the gear for the class. So I always tell people, just kind of take a small class and then just see if they like it. If they like it, then move on.
Sure.
But if if you can't afford a class or something like that, you can always just search up a YouTube video on something, and then whether it's a certain skill or whatever, then just keep practicing that skill. Yeah, just keep doing it. So that's how you get good.
And that's another thing too, is the barrier for a lot of this is a monetary barrier.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely an investment that you need to make. I mean, it's like any other hobby.
Yeah.
But if somebody's interested in fire, you can go grab a Light My Fire ferro rod, like one of the fat Army fire rods for, what are they, $15 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
So or you can get one of the Everliebens or whatever, like for around the same price. So there's of course a barrier. That's one thing that was one of the main factors was for me coming down was, aside from like having spoken to you before, but and your history of teaching and the schools that you had instructed at and whatever, the price point was super approachable.
Yeah.
So
that was a huge thing with me, is a lot of these schools and stuff charge a lot of money for classes, and you're talking $700-800 for a 2-day class.
Yeah.
So, and if you get 20 people in that class, that's some pretty good money. But my whole goal with this is to offer training to people that is just as good, if not better. I'm not trying to be like, what's it called? One-sided, I guess you could say. But that's just as good, if not better, at a lower price, a more affordable price. $175 for a 3-day class. That's a good price.
That's an amazingly good
price. You're not going to find that price anywhere else.
No.
I'm sorry, you're just not.
No.
But I wanted to do that simply just because We all know the economy's not the best right now. A lot of people can't afford to go spend a lot of extra money on some of this stuff and then go buy a huge gear list for the class. Yeah, again, with this class, I wanted to keep it fairly cheap and common price that most people can afford, whether it's, you have to go get an extra job or something, or, a kid has his, what he saved up mowing grass over the summer, something like that. He's able to spend it on training, which is, this is kind of like a lot of people have mixed opinions on it. You should have good equipment, right? The best quality you can afford, but if you just have equipment with no skills, what's the equipment worth?
Yeah,
exactly.
Right,
so I always tell people, get the equipment and then get training right after you get the equipment. That way you have the correct equipment for the training.
Right.
But I try to keep it fairly common price. On the equipment list, everything is pretty cheap. I don't, specify anything in particular, just because for a 72-hour scenario, you don't need the absolute best gear on the market. You don't need to go spend $500 on a backpack, for a 3-day thing.
Right.
If you're going to keep using it, that's different. Like, I love GoRuck bags. They're expensive, but they are some of the best packs you can buy, period. They just are.
As much as I don't like GoRuck, I can't argue that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
The quality of that is fantastic. Yep. My pack, I have a hidden woodsman pack, which is handmade, which is made in the U.S. Really quality, super quality pack.
Yep.
I think the price point on it was like $225 or $275. Yep. So I mean, it's not a cheap pack by any means. But like this weekend saw a couple of surplus packs.
Yeah, a lot of military surplus gear, man. I mean, it works. Obviously worked for servicemen and women.
Yep.
So why won't it work for this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can normally get it for really cheap. Now, 10 years ago, it was a lot cheaper than it is now because we were, in the midst of a war. So they were, getting more surplus in, newer stuff. They're getting rid of, moving out the older stuff. So you can get stuff really cheap.
Yeah.
Now, you used to be able to get a military poncho for $10-15. Now you're paying upwards of $60-70 for a military poncho.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as I love different packs and bags. I love gear just as much as anybody else, but I'm really particular on what I use as far as the area goes. Here we have a lot of briars, brambles.
Yes.
You do. I had a company send me a pack one time, and they were like, test it out, let us know what you think. And I was walking through the woods with it, and a nice big briar caught on it and ripped the whole back out of it.
Oof.
Yeah. So, I always, where I use this stuff and I do this for a living, my stuff has to last me.
Sure.
So I always spend more money on stuff.
Yep.
And I really prefer American made as much as I can get.
Yeah.
So, like the bags you make, awesome quality. They're not going to tear up. They're American made, small business. I'm a big canvas guy, so I'm a big Duluth pack guy. Just because they last. I've got a Duluth pack sitting over there that's lasted me 12 years, and I've used it religiously. So, and it's beat up. It's got a couple places where I've repaired it, but
patina.
I love it. Yeah, exactly.
It's patina.
The canvas gets a nice patina.
It does.
Yeah.
And canvas is also really nice to work with. Like the wax canvas is it's really cool. Like it's nice to fold. It's nice to stitch. Like I really love. I like working with it, like building stuff with it. It's a really nice material to work with, and two, it offers, like, I think a lot of people get so lost in the gear, but they're always like, oh, I gotta have a Dyneema, or I need to have X pack, or I need to have like this fabric or ultra grid, or so like, Cuban fiber, like, it's strong, but like if you're gonna go through fucking thickets, Dyneema's not gonna do shit for you.
You walk through here with a Dyneema pack, it'll be tore up.
Yeah,
it'll be tore up in a day.
And but then it's like we have this like traditional. It's been modernized, but we have like this traditional fabric. That's
lasts forever.
It does have it does have maintenance. You have to take care of it. You have to re-wax it.
That's with any gear, though. I mean,
true. Yeah. But it's like people love to go with like the high tech stuff. But it's like But
and I love the high tech stuff too.
Yeah, I do too. And like 1000D Cordura, man, like it's tough to beat. But we have this beautiful like this wax canvas that like if it's maintained, like man in the woods like that, it's like It's unbeatable.
And people, I mean, it gets heavy. I mean, wax canvas, you can get a wax canvas pack that weighs 10 pounds plus, but it's going to last you forever.
Right.
But yeah, usually in the summertime, I go more towards a lighter loadout. As far as gear-wise goes, I'll go more towards the like the nylons and things like that, just because it gets so freaking hot and humid here. It's like a jungle. It's thick. But in the wintertime, I always float more towards canvas. Just because it's just seasonal, I guess you could say. I'd rather have a little bit heavier gear, but I'm going to be warmer. So, especially if I'm teaching a class and I'm out for 3 or 4 days or whatever with the students, I want to be comfortable. That way I can ensure that I'm, you know, gassed up and ready to go to teach all day the next day. Because, you know, if your instructor's wore out, student safety is the #1 priority, period. And because you got to think, we are teaching people life-saving skills. So if they get in a situation and, you know, heaven forbid they die or whatever, but they trained with you, you know, situational dependent, that almost falls on your shoulders. So instructors have a duty and a responsibility to ensure the safety of their students and to be sure what they're teaching is correct. So you're constantly researching because things are always changing. So you're constantly researching, looking up new stuff, just to be sure that the information you're giving is correct and not outdated.
Well, and it's not just that. I mean, it's not just the post-training stuff. It's not just the, you know, the potentiality of real life scenarios. You know, we're walking around the woods with, you know, 3, 4, 6 inch blades that are most of them very sharp. You know, we did some land nav, going through ravines and going through creek beds and you know,
climbing up rock walls.
Like it was, you know, there's like legitimate terrain and like you know, so it's not just like the post. And like when, you know, I was working, I think I just put my hand on a briar on this hand, but I was working with just my little Swiss Army knife. And my saw, I usually cut really close to my thumb because you get better control. Saw skipped over.
And that's going to happen.
And it's part of the territory. But it's, you know, having that, you know, the instructor having the student's safety foremost in mind is obviously crucial.
Exactly. You have to be able to read the students. What kind of mindset are they in? As you know, is someone getting too hot? Is someone showing signs of heat exhaustion? Is someone showing signs of hypothermia? A lot of times they won't tell you because they don't want to
feel dumb. They don't want to be embarrassed.
They don't want to be a wimp. Exactly. But student safety is #1 priority always. Period.
So what does your demographic usually look like?
So usually, you know, it really varies. I've taught women. I've taught kids. I've taught old men, you know, 70 plus. I've taught everyone. White, brown, black. I mean, there's no discrimination. What's great about this community is it doesn't matter what color you are, what age you are, you know, any of that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is everyone wants to come together and just learn and build that community. But I've taught, like I said, kids. I've taught handicapped people. You know, I had a guy at a class one time and he only had one arm. So everything that we did that entire weekend, I had to teach him how to do with one arm, which I thought was awesome. And he just absolutely killed the class. That's awesome.
So doing like one-arm faro striking.
One arm fires, you know, setting up his ridgeline and his shelter with one arm, you know, collecting water, naving with one arm, all that stuff. And he just absolutely killed it.
And that's, you know, this weekend we learned the rapid ridgeline. And like I've known about it. I meant to set one up beforehand, but I didn't, and I'm glad that I didn't because I got to do it while I was here. And you know, thinking about that, like with the knots and like I've already forgotten all the names of them. But thinking about having, you know, my hands to do that, like using both of my hands. I mean, like that would be quite an obstacle.
And in all honesty too, you gotta think survival is a lazy man's game, right? So you don't have to have a set ridgeline and a set of knots to use with that. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? You could put a bungee cord on each side of the tarp, wrap it around the tree, and it's going to hold the dude up. So, or even, you know, there's an awesome shelter that I carry that is super lightweight. It weighs like 6 ounces, and on each side it already has the strings tied into it, or the line tied into it, and you just do it like a shoelace knot on each side. One tree, and then it's got 2 stakeout points in the back. You have a shelter up in a minute.
That's awesome.
So, it's a lot of people get too, I guess you could say, overcomplicated with a lot of this stuff. This stuff is very simple. What matters is that you just practice and practice and practice, so you get better at it. And you can start a fire whenever it's really pouring a freaking rain.
Yeah.
You can nav through anything, right? So that's what's really important. It's not so much, how do I put this? I had a brain fart there. My mind is.
What would you say that people overcomplicate the most?
Man, that is a tough question. I'd say, as far as, I can't really say in set, but a lot of people overcomplicate navigation and then shelter building. Those are the 2 things that, from my experience, that I've seen that a lot of people overcomplicate. Fire making is pretty simple, right? But when it comes to shelters and navigation, people, like the other day, there was a guy who was starting on the land nav course, and this first point, we taught you guys leapfrogging, all that stuff, but his first point he was going to was across a field, and the point was on a tree, but he was having his partner leapfrog to get there. You don't have to do that if you can see line of sight that object. You can walk straight to it. Right. So a lot of people overcomplicate that, whether they're trying to box out an object. They don't need to box out, just because they don't want to, go through a little bit of briars or what have you. That's usually it's navigation.
Jake's saying a little bit of briars, but what he's meaning armpit deep thistles and thorns.
I'm used to it though, man. I'm so used to it that it's normal to me. I mean, for me, I'm not going to mess around. I'm going to plow right through it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We had a point yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. And the azimuth shot. It shot like right to the schoolhouse or the cabin. And we're just like searching for this tag. We're looking. And like we had gone through there the previous day, so like we all knew where we were.
Yep.
But we didn't want to miss any tags. We wanted to make sure that we're hitting the points. And we didn't know if like he was gonna have us like come up the ridgeline or what he wanted from the course. Because like you can kind of like figure out like, okay, like you start shooting these points and you go, okay, like you kind of figure out a path.
Yeah.
And we just shoot this, and it was deep, and it was through this creek bed, and it wasn't just like a bed. Like there's like, stone walls on one side,
like
and
this,
like it's down in a draw, and it's like had it been
straight down
wet,
the hill.
Had it been wet, that would have been nasty.
Yeah.
We were shooting, and we were like, man, like we were leapfrog. There was 3 of us. So we had the opportunity to kind of like take advantage of there being 3 people.
Yep.
Because, one person would shoot and stay in place and then guide the other person like, okay, you're on line.
Yep.
And then that person would shoot the next person. So we get like these big leaps.
Yep.
And like they're, pretty close. And we're like, what the hell, man? So we're like, I'm standing in this creek bed with Roland after having like, there's this big rock, it's like just an escarpment.
Yep.
And like I'm trying to like get by it, and then I just like my foot just goes right down into the mud. Yep. And I'm like, okay, this is fun. So I figured out like you could actually crawl over top of the rock. But he's standing there like we're looking and looking and looking. There's no tags. No tag. We're like, what is going on? Like, okay, this is kind of weird.
Yep.
But then I look over, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So one of the tags was cut from the tree, and I could see the tag, see the mount on the tree. Tag on the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I thought I picked the tag up, but I guess I didn't.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, well, I'm like, we got to go up because like we were just looking right at the ridgeline, the hill of the ridge, and I'm like, we're gonna pop up, like our car's gonna be right there. So we ended up shooting up, and that was it. Yep. But there was no return to cabin. There was no like. No directive.
There was, you just didn't find it.
Well, we picked up the tab and looked at it.
Well,
that tab was blank.
I put that tag there because the tag right before that shot straight to your very last tag.
Yeah.
I put that tag in between as like a breaker tag.
Yeah.
But I was like, don't really need it that much because I don't have a set Like, I'm not going to say like, oh, the tag's only, they're going to be within 50 meters of each other. Nobody knows how far. So that last tag is like a 200 or 300 meter stretch.
Yeah, it's a piece.
Up to the very last one that says uphill BTC, back to camp. So
you didn't see that tag.
Yep. I think you guys missed it and someone else missed it. Another guy's got it.
Yeah, because we went up and then we were kind of like, because we, at that point, we're like, okay, like we know we're out. We're just going to go back. And the way that I saw my route up this was there's a small little ridge and then a dip and then up to the main ridge, and that's how I went. And then one of the other guys like went like around and like up and like.
So where the creek splits right there. If you just would have went straight up, you would have ran right into him.
I did.
You probably just walked right by it then.
Probably. We had one tag. We had one tag where there was a. I don't know if it was hemlock or I don't know what kind of tree it was, but there's a little cluster of trees, and we shot for that because like that's like a mark that like that's distinguishable in the distance, like that's on the on the shot. We go down to it. Okay, cool. We're still shooting. We're up on this hill. There's the ridge that follows that way. And I'm like, okay, like I know the cabin's this way. Like, are we heading back already? I'm like, we're missing something. So I went all the way back, climbed this big ass steep hill, and I left the other two up there. And there's a barbed wire fence and like a crossover. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the original one. So I shoot it again, and I'm looking down, and I see that little clump of trees right next to the tree tag.
Yeah.
It's like, and the tag was literally like 7 feet to the right of it.
And it could have been you might not have had your compass completely level.
Yeah.
Could have been off a little bit because a lot of times those little degree readings on the compasses are hard for me to see. I have to really look at them, and they're in 2 degree increments. Yeah. So if you don't have it exactly right, then you might throw you off a little bit. Yep. But this is some really rough terrain in this area, and that's the reality of it. Is if you are in a situation and you do decide to self-rescue versus stay put. If you do decide to self-rescue, then you're going to have a lot of terrain to go over. Rough terrain, rough walking. It's not going to be just a little hike through the woods and all that. You're going to be booking it. And I think that course that you're talking about is 1.5 miles long.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, about 1.5 miles long
seems right.
over rough terrain. And by the end of it, some of these guys were just smoked by the end of it. And that's the reality of it. For sure. And but you went 1.5 miles in hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes.
It took us 2 hours, man.
Yeah, 2 hours sometimes.
Yeah, we missed. I mean, we missed 2 points, I think. So we had to shoot and that's backtrack.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think too. You're only shooting to little cattle tags. Yeah. Right. Just tiny little tags. So you have to be extremely accurate. Yeah. But what that does is that if you have to shoot to a building that you see, 3-4 clicks out because you're up on a hilltop. That allows you to be able to shoot straight to the building. Yeah. It's a bigger object. Yeah. But so nav is something that I really enjoy. Paul is a really good nav instructor. I think he's probably one of the best nav instructors I've ever seen. As far as his you have to be able to break things down to a almost like an 8th grade level. That way everybody understands it.
I'll probably struggle with that still, but maybe if it were 6th grade level.
Well, it's just reps, man.
I know. So the second course that we did it was a much easier course, much shorter. Yep. But the second course that we did, it was like we felt like we were just like hopping. It was just like tag. Like it was just like through. So like that was super. We were kind of looking at each other like. Do we get better at this, or is this shorter? Of like, no, it's shorter. Yeah,
it is a little bit. I think that one's only about 1 mile long.
If that. And the terrain wasn't nearly as intense.
That course is thicker, but the terrain isn't nearly as tense as now. Some of these other courses that I've already plotted out on GPS, they're going to be rough. They're rough, but that's the reality of it.
And it is, and like I'm grateful that I have. Like the pack that I was carrying, like it's a weight that I'm not like I'm used to that, man.
Exactly.
Like that's not like for me. It's like that's not a heavy weight. So the gear list was a basic basic gear list. So fixed blade Swiss Army knife, compass, Mylar blanket, poncho, I had a bedroll, I didn't have a bedroll, but I had a wool blanket, Faro, Bic.
Yeah.
I had my boogie on, of course, because I don't leave home without it.
That's right. That's right. Don't ever leave home without your boogie.
I had some snacks. I had my nesting cup and bottle for water. It's like basic, gear list, and it was like. It was maybe 15 pounds, 17 pounds. And I have a heavy ass poncho too.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of these guys, a lot of people, there's always people who will bring extra stuff to a course because they think they're going to need it. I tell people, just bring the equipment list, bring some extra food, and then bring whatever medications you take on a day-to-day basis. But if you're just going out on a day hike somewhere with your, woman or, your kids or whatever, and you don't even plan on staying out there, you just want to go see some views. A lot of people aren't going to be carrying a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You're not going to carry a giant backpack full of a bunch of crap that it fills the entire bag full of survival stuff. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
You're going to be carrying a small kit, but what you need to know how to use each item in that kit to the best of its ability.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing I see is like, oh, I'm going on a hike, and these people carrying these giant bags full of stuff for their survival situation, when in reality, it's just more weight added to them.
Right. Well, more weight, more prone to injury. And more issues with that.
Yeah.
And so I initially bought just like a military style poncho, like this recommended for the course. And so I have this USGI. Yeah, USGI fleck turn.
Yep.
Poncho, and I was like, okay, cool, I got that. And then you keep looking at gear, and then I'm like, man,
that's a sweet oilcloth poncho, man.
So nice.
I'm telling you, man, this stuff's addicting. The gear's addicting.
No, I know
too.
it is. So I just kept looking. I'm like, man. So because I bought their 8x8 oilskin.
Yeah.
So I have that. I have their tarp.
Yep.
And I was like, man, this is nice. And I was like, I'm just gonna get the poncho. So
there you go.
So now I have the fleck tarn poncho I bought. I keep that in my car now.
Yep.
So just another I keep a bit of emergency stuff in my car, but just have that other layer of preparedness.
Exactly.
So looking into 2024, what's going on with Buckeye?
So I've got a couple events I'm doing. I've got an event in February called I think it's the Midwest Woodcraft Winter Camp.
So events that you're traveling to?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. There'll be events that I'm traveling to.
Okay.
So I'm going to set up a vendor booth, sell what little bit of gear that I do sell, and then basically I enjoy teaching more. So that's what I try to go on more is just teaching at events. Yep. So I'll be there. I think Paul and Tony will be there as well.
Awesome. That's in February in Illinois?
February, yep. And then in March, we have the Bushcraft Preparedness and Prepping Bushcraft and Preparedness Expo. And,
that's a mouthful.
And I think it's in Hindman, Kentucky, or Hindman. So that's Eastern Kentucky. That's going to be a huge event, and I'm teaching quite a few classes. I'm teaching how to build a survival kit, Intro to Land Nav, Intro to Land Nav 2, which would be in the field, food procurement tools that you can carry with you, and then something else. I can't remember what it was though. I've got 5 classes. I'm missing one, but I don't remember. Paw mapping is what it is, which is another thing with paw mapping.
Paw mapping?
PAUL mapping.
Paw.
It's a Green Beret style navigation.
Okay.
But I'll be teaching that along with the rest of the land. So I'm teaching a lot of land nav, but the paw mapping is my favorite thing to teach in land nav because it's probably most applicable to people, and it's something you can map out your entire property.
So I'm assuming PAW is an acronym for something?
Yeah, positive azimuth uniform layout.
Got it.
Yeah.
PAW. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's why PAW is so good at nav.
It might be. It might be.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah, it might be.
So tell me, or tell everyone that is still watching or listening, where can they find you in the interwebs?
So you can find me on Instagram at Buckeye_Bushcraft. You can also find me on Facebook, just underneath my name, Jake Trent. I think Instagram is my biggest platform, so I post there the most. I think I've got 32,000 33,000 followers on Instagram, something like that. Yeah. So I post more on Instagram than anything else. On YouTube, it's also Buckeye Bushcraft. I try to post as many videos as I can. Truth be told, I absolutely hate filming, actually doing it. I love editing though. I don't know what it is. I love to edit.
Weird.
But I hate to film, man.
I hate editing.
I hate filming. I can sit there and edit probably because I'm really fast at it. But I'll normally go out and I'll crank out. Okay, there we go.
No, we have 5 minutes, so we're just gonna wrap it up.
Oh, okay, cool.
So you love editing and you're really fast at it.
Yeah. So I like editing better than I do filming. So I do post on YouTube though. I try to stay somewhat consistent with it, but between teaching schedule and all that good stuff, sometimes it gets a little hectic and I just don't have time for it.
Sure.
Past 2 weeks, I haven't had time for it because I did an event last week, have this class this week.
Yep.
So this coming week is when I'll be posting more videos.
And I assume you have a website?
Yes, buckeyebushcraft.com. You can go there, you can check out the training, you can check out, I've got some equipment on there. I've got more that's on the way. But training is really the biggest one. I'm posting my 2024 schedule end of next week, so that'll be on there. It's a very basic website, so it's pretty much
too, man.
It's
Basic
pretty much
gets it done.
Pictures, the add to cart button, and the description of the class
That's
and what
mine.
you need to bring. So and contact info.
Perfect.
So that is pretty much what it is. Awesome. But yeah, that's where people can reach me and find me. So.
And is there anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything, yeah.
Awesome.
I think we pretty much covered everything. Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you for sitting down and
thanks,
sharing some of your time.
Thanks for having me on, man.
And thank you for listening and watching or watching and not listening, however you choose to subscribe to this, how to ingest and digest this. So again, Jake Trent from Buckeye Bushcraft. If you guys have any questions, as usual, send me a DM, send me an email. Yep. I'm assuming the same will go for Jake.
Yep, always.
We'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.